What's up, watchers? This is Matt from License to Watch. I'm here to once again tell you guys about our Patreon page. Sure, we love doing License to Watch for free. We love our fans, and we appreciate you guys listening to us yammer on about Star Trek and Exorcist and whatnot. But we also do a bonus show called License to Watch Exclusive Content, and it's yours to check out for the low, low price of just $1 a month. It's as simple as going to patreon.com/L2W and signing up for just $1. You get your own RSS feed link, which you can plug into your podcast app of choice. Our Patreon show will pop up as a separate show and everything. It's simple, relatively. So let me tell you about what you get. On exclusive content, we cover bonus movies, non-franchise favorites of ours that we know you want us to discuss. In the past, we've covered Cliffhanger, Hard Boiled, Twister, all 4 Star Trek Next Gen movies, Dune, Rudy, Scarface, and coming up in a few weeks is our very own tribute to the late Sean Connery, as we cover his Academy Award-winning performance in Brian De Palma's 1987 classic, The Untouchables. So head on over to patreon.com/L2W now and sign up for just $1. It helps us pay for the overhead of operating a free podcast. If you love this show, then please be a pal and help support our addiction to hearing our own voices. Especially Harris. The man needs constant validation. It's pathetic. I mean, just join the Patreon. Okay, here's the free show. After a successful re-release of the original Exorcist film in the year 2000, Warner Brothers decided to return to the franchise by going back to its roots. They hired Paul Schrader, writer of Taxi Driver and Raging Bull and director of American Gigolo and Autofocus, to direct a prequel to The Exorcist. The film was to show Father Merrin's first encounter with the demon Pazuzu while in Africa, a plotline that was loosely explored in Exorcist II. Director John Frankenheimer was originally hired for the job, but he stepped down just before his death. Paul Schrader was his replacement. Schrader was given a $30 million budget, and with that he went and shot a more psychological approach rather than a flat-out gore fest, which is what the studio had been expecting. After screening his first cut, Warner Brothers fired Paul Schrader. Unsure of how to fix the film, the studio hired director Renny Harlin, most well known for directing Die Hard 2 and the Sylvester Stallone 90s action classic, Cliffhanger. Screenwriter Alexi Hawley was hired to help retool the script for Harlan, who went on to reshoot close to 90% of the film off of an additional $50 million budget. He kept some actors and recast others, but mostly reused the still-standing sets that had been built for Schrader's version. The film focused on Father Merrin, played by Stellan Skarsgård, discovering an ancient church buried in Africa in 1948. The film was met with mostly negative reviews. It went on to gross just $76.9 million and was considered a critical and financial disaster. Author of both the book and the original film's screenplay, William Peter Blatty, said that watching this film was, quote, the most humiliating professional experience. But did we agree with this sentiment, or were we able to find the good within this evil little film? Join me, Matt McGregor, along with my co-hosts Harris McCabe and Colin Shaw, as we dig deep under the African soil to archaeologically examine this ancient evil artifact of a movie. So make sure your terribly CGI'd hyenas are fed, somehow crucify yourself upside down, and mentally prepare yourself for a heaping mess of extreme child violence as we decide whether or not this film is a worthy prequel. We're talking about the 4th entry into the Exorcist film franchise, 2004's Renny Harlin classic, Exorcist: The Beginning. This is a show about franchises, spooky movie franchises. You're listening to License to Watch.
Why in the world was this movie made? Lord Jesus Christ! It is he who commands you! The power of Christ compels you!
So guys, I almost died this week.
Of kidney stone?
Yeah, I thought I was dying. I woke up on Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. And, Maya wakes up at like 7 or 7:30 every day. And the routine is like I usually take her in the living room and I put some like baby show on while I make her breakfast. And I think she woke up like earlier than usual or something. And like I was sitting on the couch with her, and for whatever reason, I put the movie Spaceballs on. And so we were watching Spaceballs, and all of a sudden I started to feel this weird like something in my left backside. It wasn't quite pain, but it was like a discomfort. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm sitting funny. And little by little, it started getting worse and worse. And finally, it was like excruciating pain. It just felt like someone had like, much like Temple of Doom, someone had reached their hand inside my body and was like squeezing, my kidney. And I couldn't escape. And like, when you have to like poop really bad, it like comes and goes in waves. Like, if you have diarrhea and you're like out somewhere, you're like, oh God, I really have to go to the bathroom. And then it kind of like subsides and you're like, oh, I feel so much better. And then it comes back. With this, there was like no subsiding. It was just constant. And at a certain point, I was like, I have to go to the hospital. I don't know what the hell is wrong. And I was like writhing in pain. Like the whole car ride over to the hospital, I was like moaning like some sort of beached whale. And it was horrible. I really didn't know what was wrong. I thought I was going to die. And then the hospital, I got there and like, they were just moving so slowly and they're making me fill out paperwork and shit. And I was like, for the love of God, just give me something. And so
drugs,
finally
drugs.
Yeah, I'm like, just give me the drugs. Everything, like a nurse would walk into the room and I was like, is that the drugs for pain? And she's like, no. I'm like, fuck you, bitch. So they finally stuck an IV in me and gave me morphine. And I was like, oh yeah, sweet, sweet morphine. And then I came home and I pissed the sucker out in one shot. So yeah, that was my Wednesday.
That's weird how you start every podcast with that.
Yeah.
I've never had kidney stones, but I think my dad had them once when I was young, and it was like the first time I ever saw him like freaking out and had to go to the hospital and everything, and thought he was dying, thought his appendix burst, just didn't know what was wrong, just knew something horrible was going on.
That was my first thought too, that my appendix was about to burst.
So I've been paranoid my entire life about it. But luckily has not happened yet. So how do you avoid it? What do I have to do? I got to eat a lot of gravel so it mulches up the other stones.
You got to drink the gravel. You can't chew it.
Yeah.
They haven't told me yet because I had to bring it to like a lab today and they have to see what it is first, because it could be a calcium deposit. It could be like,
Is there a chance it's valuable? Could it be a diamond?
Yeah, sir, this is gold, solid gold.
Your superpower is that your kidney stones come out gold. Well, that's kind of a mixed bag, isn't it?
There's a problem. This metal doesn't exist on Earth.
I love it.
Well, welcome to License to Watch, and we're talking about kidney stones. But really, we're talking about the first prequel for The Exorcist. This Exorcist: The Beginning, the 2004 Rennie Harlan classic. Joining us today is our very special guest, writer and director Julio Vincent Gambuto.
Hey, everybody.
There he is.
Hello.
I wasn't sure if I should talk before the intro or not, but I was really shocked to learn that the pain is not while you're passing it, it's before.
Yes.
Wait,
yeah.
when it actually comes out of your pee hole, does it hurt? Because that's the part I'm most
not at
afraid
all.
of.
That's what I'm afraid of too. That's where I keep hearing horror stories, but Matt said no.
I have to say, Matt, it depends on like how much stuff Matt normally shoves in and out of his pee hole. So maybe he's like, no, it slipped out just like a normal, metal rod would, or
I'm really into sounding
a billiard ball, or
yeah, just twigs, like
just
random
random shit I found in the yard,
a pool cue,
Phillips head screwdriver, the usual stuff.
Yeah. So relative to that, it was not painful. Got it, man.
No, I was shocked to learn, in the hospital it hurt really bad and everything before, and your whole body hurts, and they kind of told me what this is. They took an ultrasound and they didn't see anything in my kidney, and so they were like, that's good, that means it's a really little one and it's stuck in your ureter, which is like the tube that goes from your kidney to your bladder, and it's just traveling down that sucker, and when it gets to your bladder you'll be fine and then you'll just pee it out. And in my head I was like, wow, they're really glossing over this like pee it out part. That's gonna hurt. Like it was a bunch of like female nurses. I'm like, these bitches, they have no idea this is gonna be bad. And And no, like when I peed like the second I got home, and it just like dunk, like just came right out, and I was like, what the fuck? Didn't feel like anything.
Was it gold when it came out?
I wish I wouldn't be talking to you jerks right now. I'd be,
Wait, so you had to scoop it back out of the liquid, like?
well, they give you a strainer, much like when you make pasta, and
Okay. That's nice.
so yeah, I had to pee into the strainer. It came right out, and there it was.
I
Man,
think
I
that's
was
like-
that's a cool idea, but I wish they had given you a pan to pee into, because I think it would make a satisfying clink. Like I'd like to hear that little plink. Oh, there it is.
It still did make that sound.
Oh,
which
good.
was wonderful.
Oh, okay.
I wish I recorded
Good.
it.
I'm glad.
What's going to be the problem is you find out what caused it, and you're buying something from the same company that makes the strainer, and then it's like,
Dun, dun, dun.
no.
Colin, that's like the
Oh,
second
no.
good. That's like the second good story idea you've had for kidney stones in the last couple of minutes. We might have found your genre.
Your niche.
He's the greatest screenwriter in the world, but he only does stories about kidney stones.
So the kidney stones are not new this week? Like you talk about them often on the show?
No.
Julio, are you you're from the rugged lands of Shaolin? Are you on Staten Island right now?
I am from there. Yes, I'm not. Funny enough, moved into Manhattan about 9 months ago, at the end of January, to have a swinging New York City social life, and I have not left my apartment since March 7th.
So you're
right.
from Staten Island?
I am. Yeah, I grew up there and went back after film school, and then.
Have you seen What We
this
Do in the
shit happened.
Shadows? It's all.
Oh yeah, it's really
Yeah,
good.
I love that show
Yeah.
so much. So good.
Really, really good. Yeah, it's. I love the island, love my people, but.
Have you met the king of Staten Island, Pete Davidson?
I haven't met him, but I'm about to email him because our premiere or our release is in a few weeks, and I want him to be a part of it. So we'll see if he responds or if he's just like, "Who's this asshole?" So.
Yeah, so speaking of release, you've got your movie Team Marco is out now. It came out 2 days ago on November 20th.
Yes.
And it is available where? Where can people see it? Want to tell us a little bit about it, maybe?
Yeah, sure. It's nationwide on digital, so anywhere you get movies online, it's on all the cable on-demand services for buyer for sale or for buyer for rent, and then it's on Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Google, Fandango, Vudu, Roku, all of those. So basically anywhere you get movies digitally.
That's great. So for the listeners, Harris and I went to grad school with Julio, and we all went to film school, and to actually come out and just a few years later, he wrote and directed this movie, and kudos.
We all had big dreams of coming out of USC and directing our first feature, and of course, none of us did, but Julio.
That's not true. Others
No, that
have
isn't true,
as
but
well.
but none of us in this podcast did, but Julio.
Fair enough.
I mean, Harris, moved on to a career in porn that seems to be working out for
Yeah,
him.
I mean, fluffing ain't easy, but
Porn directing.
This friend of mine, well, I shouldn't call him a friend, but this guy that I knew when I lived in LA, whose Twitter I follow, has turned himself into a porn star. And so the other day I was just scrolling through, and suddenly he's just fucking. And I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to see this on Twitter.
I like how you said. Turned himself into one, as if it's some kind of Harry Potter magic.
Like a magic trick.
yeah,
Totally.
No, it's just he was trying to make it. He was trying to make it in this hard scrabble, tough ass business, and things got hard, and he made the most
Real
of it.
hard.
Made the most of the hard situation. Yeah.
Craziness.
Well, that's great.
So
Congratulations.
yeah, so back to my family movie. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It is a kids movie, but it's like one of those kids movies that I think adults can be entertained by, and so if you have kids, it's something that it wouldn't be painful to watch with them.
Yeah, totally. It's
And
more
you had a
like-
great. Your lead actor was great. Actually, both your lead actors, Marco and the grandpa, were both really good. So
Yeah, they're phenomenal. They were so fun to work with, and it was such a great experience, and the production itself was wonderful. But seeing it, obviously out in the world is just kind of a surreal moment. So
I liked that it had bocce ball. I've always been curious about bocce ball. I've always been bocce curious.
Thanks. Yeah. Are you bocce curious? Once you throw your first ball, you'll never go back.
Now, I think I might have, I don't know if I ever saw the final cut. I think I might have saw an earlier cut. Did you keep the ending where Marco kills his grandfather in revenge?
Takes
With
two
a bocce ball.
Yeah. I know it tested poorly, but I mean, I felt like that was where the spirit of the film really lied.
We wanted to make sure that there was some sort of connective tissue to having me on this podcast for The Exorcist. So at the end of the movie, maggots come out of his eyes.
It's just out of nowhere, it just switches genres and it goes full horror.
I saw it coming.
Yeah.
Sure you did.
Totally.
Yeah. No, very, very, very family safe movie. Nobody dies. A fun film. Everyone should check it out.
So we just had some technical difficulties, but Julio is back, and he's on the correct microphone this time.
And his mic is sounding better than ever.
You might say that in proper Exorcist form, that Julio's garage band was possessed.
I wouldn't say that at all, no.
Like this movie, it was possessed with bad CGI, dated CGI.
God. Poor movie.
Are we gonna jump in on that? Is that
let's jump in on this movie. So a little bit of history about this movie.
Wait, Matt, did you do your normal 8-minute introduction where you explained all the history about this movie? Because we could probably skip ahead to talking about it.
I guess, but I mean, we could always cut this out too.
I guess it's up to you.
Well, I just wanted to remind you guys that immediately starting this movie, I texted you, is this a History Channel movie? Because that's what the CGI looked like to me. And
that's what the color palette of this film is.
Yeah, I really wanted to see the guy come in with his talking head and his hair standing straight up saying, maybe it was aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie looks like a History Channel like reenactment scene.
And yeah, it's not just that they had dated computer animation for things, it's that there was nothing that they weren't willing to turn into a computer animation. Like despite the fact that somebody had to at some point been like, hey, did you notice this looks really shitty? And they're just like, no, more. We just need more.
I nominate the hyenas for worst CGI. The hyenas looked like sort of pigs. It was really and they were just kind of gray blobs.
They move like unnaturally fast. Like they don't move like any physical animal that's ever existed in the world has. But let's save that because I think the category of worst CGI in this movie is a very competitive field that we should get into in depth at some point later in the podcast.
It's competitive.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
what did you want to talk about?
This movie,
it is a sequel, a prequel.
I was going to say, I think this movie was a result of the success of the re-release of the first Exorcist film in the year 2000 or 2001.
That's some good background.
I mean, I didn't read this anywhere, but it has to be the case that, like, they re-released Exorcist with new scenes. It was a big hit. It made lots of money, and they were like, you know what? This is an untapped resource here that we can mine for gold. Let's make a prequel.
You know what blows my mind about that is that they looked at that, they saw the first Exorcist, and they were like, you know what we need an origin story for? Dusty old Father Merrin. That would be the really interesting story. Instead of the natural reaction to watching the first Exorcist, which is, you know what we need an origin story for? Kinderman, rookie year. How much would you have liked to see Officer Kinderman as a rookie police officer, and he's getting schooled by the older detective who's like, listen, Kinderman, I'm going to tell you the first thing you need to know about the Force. You better get a date to the policeman's ball on Saturday. Do not go to the policeman's ball stag, or nobody will respect you. Listen, Kinderman, the first thing is, aim low, buddy. You just need a date. Don't go shooting for the moon with some priest or something. Just get a date.
We have to fill Julio in. He has no idea what the hell you're talking about.
No, but I'm thoroughly enjoying watching that.
A massive subplot of the first movie was a cop trying to get a priest to go to the movies with him. I can't explain it any better than that.
I definitely see Kinderman rookie year as like him and his partner going to the movies a lot, and the partner dies at some point in the plot, and he's like, yeah, I used to have a partner. We used to go to the movies.
We'd see all the pictures together.
Yeah.
Exorcist 1, Exorcist 2.
And then you see him just like waiting outside of a movie theater, Like, and if anyone walks by, he just kind of like tries to get him to go in with him.
Hey, you like popcorn?
They might have felt like they were dipping into the well too many times, since a big part of the Exorcist 3 was also Kinderman looking for a priest to go to the movies with him. So it's like, so I know, Julio, you probably assumed that these movies were about exorcisms, but they're as much about a cop looking for a date from a priest. It's inexplicable, and I'm really, honestly, my biggest disappointment in this film was that they deviated from the working formula that had been going so well for them.
And my biggest disappointment is that we're not talking about those movies.
Well, we did.
Imagine Police Academy, but instead of them actually teaching police stuff, they're teaching you how to get priests to go to the movies and then add some demons. You've got Kinderman Rookie Year, maybe the best film you've ever seen.
I don't know. I think we should pitch it. I think we should start pitching it around town. I think this has got legs. This definitely could happen.
Harris, do you think you could do a good job of informing Julio about like kind of what the last 3 movies we've been dealing with, you know, what they've been about?
Yes.
And how they're connected to one another, perhaps?
Yeah,
Yes.
tell me, Harris, because I told Matt my favorite trilogy is Back to the Future.
Well, this is basically the same thing.
It's basically, yeah, exactly. Right?
Yeah, this is the precursor to Back to the Future.
Yeah. So the first movie was very upfront. It was about a girl who's possessed, and the priest.
Wait, have you seen the first one, Julio?
I've seen the original, the first one. Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so I'm not surprised that you could have seen the first one and totally forgotten about Kinderman, the cop who just wants to get a date from this priest, because it is such a minor part of the plot, and he just sort of shows up out of nowhere. But the bulk of the movie is about this priest who is trying to perform an exorcism, and he calls in an older priest, Father Merrin, who's played by what's his name? Help me out here.
Max von Sydow.
Max von Sydow. And Max von Sydow in old man makeup. And then the older priest dies, and then the younger priest dies. And then we go on to the sequel where the girl is older and she is becoming possessed again. But it's more like a sci-fi movie in a weird way, because they have this thing, she's going to see a psychiatrist, and they have this device that lets the psychiatrist join her in her subconscious and see what she sees and go back to the exorcism, and that somehow releases the demon. And then
Well, there's another priest. Don't forget the priest.
I was
There's always priests.
I was about to get to the other priest. So there's another priest who I think was originally supposed to be one of the priests from the first one, but they couldn't get him. So they have Richard Burton come in and sober up just enough to deliver a thrilling performance as another priest who goes into this psychic machine into her brain and uses it for exorcisms. And then we move on to the third film, which does not have Linda Blair anymore, but now we actually go back to Kinderman, the cop from the first movie, and it's all about Kinderman the cop, and it's like a serial killer film with like supernatural serial killer elements, where Brad Dourif is being possessed by the priest from the first movie, who actually still is alive, or vice versa, and Kinderman the cop and some other random blonde priest that shows up in the third act for no reason.
It's the other way around. Brad Dourif is possessing
the body of the priest who died in the first movie, who somehow didn't die. It's a mess. It is a spectacular mess. It is one of the worst movies I've ever watched, and almost not even in a fun way. Like, the second Exorcist is a dumb movie that actually is fun, and the third Exorcist is just a dumb, bad movie that George C. Scott somehow found himself in, and all the yelling in the world wouldn't get him out of it.
I felt one of the highlights of Exorcist 3 was learning that there are similarities between George C. Scott and
Lee J. Cobb.
Snails from Caddyshack.
Judge Smales, yes. Which
Judge
there are no
Smales
similarities
from
between Ted
Caddyshack.
Knight and no. I feel like this is an argument that must be exhausting our listeners at this point. But
Yeah. So the
Every
point
time I
of
say the word
this,
cop, I think of Mall Cop, just for no reason. It just pops into my head.
Well,
now
there must
that's
be
a
some reason.
franchise.
that's a franchise we're doing next. We're doing the Mall Cop franchise right after this.
The point I was trying to get Harris to let you know about is that all of these movies, aside from the first one, are pretty much failures. They all tried to do something, whereas most sequels would try to repeat, what was great about the first movie. Like, I think the second movie kind of ventured off into another genre almost. There are no scares whatsoever. It's more like
than
a
almost.
science fiction.
Yeah, totally. Completely. And the best part about the first movie was the sound, the creepy Exorcist music, which they almost never use again in the entire fucking series, inexplicably.
Yeah. I mean, everything great was removed, and they tried something totally different. And then with the third movie, it's like they said, forget everything that happened in the second movie. Let's do something completely off the wall. And that was a failure, too. So now we're at the fourth movie, and this is now how many years after the last one? It's like 12 years or 13 years or something like that.
We're in 2004 now, right?
Yeah, and the last movie was like 1990, I think.
Yeah,
so 14
years.
And now they're trying to do a prequel for the first time. So they're disregarding everything that's happened in the other sequels because they don't need to mention them because chronologically they haven't happened yet. So all we care about is Father Merrin, who is now played by Stellan Star. I keep saying Skarsgård.
He is a star, man. He's a Skarsgård.
Star.
He's a star. This movie famously had lots of problems behind the scenes. They hired Paul Schrader, the writer of Taxi Driver, to direct this movie. He, upon the first executive screening of this film, the Warner Brothers execs hated it so much that they fired him on the spot and hired a new director to fix this movie. And by fix, he shot 90% of the movie over again. And so that's the movie that we watched, the Rennie Harlin directed. I believe the only scenes that are directed by Paul Schrader are the World War II flashback scenes to the traumatic events that happened to him.
Interesting. The snow scenes.
The snow scenes. Yep.
Yeah.
Everything else was reshot. So that's Exorcist the beginning.
That's where
Let's
we're
get
at.
right into
I like
it.
calling that. You call them the snow scenes. And
Yeah.
I call them the little girl getting shot in the heads.
Yeah,
I
which we
would
had to see
not
like
do that.
4 times.
I would not
The
do
snow wasn't like the prevailing image that I walked away with.
that. It was,
I
was
was
for
co-
me.
I was calling them the Nazi scenes. I felt like
Yeah.
the Nazis were a
I
big
like
part
how
of that.
The first time the little girl gets shot, they don't show it. And I'm like, oh, that was nice.
That was
It's
tasteful.
implied, you know?
Tasteful.
That was tasteful, yeah. But then the next 3 times they show it over and over again. I was like, okay.
I don't know.
This
I
is
don't
too
know
much.
if that was a Rennie Harlin call or what, but I kind of is it completely insane for me to suggest that possibly Rennie Harlin was like, yeah, we should really get that girl's brains all over this.
We
movie.
need to see more of the blood from the
Yeah.
girl's head. She's young and people will love this.
I mean,
I felt it was overkill. By the second time he was flashing back, I already understood like what the flashback
Had
was
transpired.
all about. Yeah, and I was like, okay, again, all right.
I think
Fine.
there's something to be said for the studio's mindset when you look at like Paul Schrader, who obviously wrote Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Last Temptation of Christ, a lot of Scorsese movies. Not to mention he did Hardcore and Mishima, American Gigolo. He's Autofocus, Affliction. He directed a lot of his own very good movies, and they go, you know what? Get us the guy who did A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Masters. We want the director of The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. That's going to be the solution to this. The cliffhanger guy. Get me the cliffhanger guy to fix this thing. Get me the Cutthroat Island guy that's going to save this movie.
But you
Well,
know
I
what's
think
crazy is without all of that context, I didn't think it was awful.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I mean-
I grant
And
you
I
that.
went into it thinking like, oh man, this is going to be bad. And like, it wasn't horrible. Like, it was watchable.
It was surprisingly watchable.
It was surprisingly watchable. Yes. I don't know how you guys felt, but I thought it was.
So what I was gonna say is that this movie kind of exactly met expectations for me in a lot of ways. Like, it didn't necessarily exceed them, but it didn't go under. It was kind of like, and for me, it was as soon as I realized that it was part of a group of movies that I've seen before and very much kind of fit into their time in cinema history, I was immediately thinking about Underworld, the sequels to Underworld, the Blade sequels, the Resident Evil movies,
all the a little too much CGI movies. That should be like a whole genre of just a little too much CGI.
But basically, like, there's this era of the 2000s where you had these sort of, goth intellectual properties sequel movies, and they're all very similar, and they won't let you down so much as they also won't, blow you away. But I loved that kind of shit. This is like, it, the 2000 to 2010 encompassed much of my 20s and late teens. And it was this time, these movies to me fit really into this time, because it was this time where it was the heyday of the DVD, basically, before Blu-rays were consumed on the level they are now, and after the price drop of the DVD. Basically, DVDs at this time were anywhere from $20 to $3, and people my age had collections of them in the hundreds.
Bought everything.
Yeah, like and there's still like a few hundred, like something like 400 DVDs like locked up in a a storage somewhere in Texas that my mom may throw away any day.
Colin, I want to tell you, that was the smartest analysis you have ever given on this entire podcast. Of exactly, like, no, but you totally and you articulated so well. You encompassed exactly where in the pantheon of film history this film sits. Like, you have articulated it perfectly. It is that era of like too much CGI, but also it was a time when, like, from an industry perspective, this was like the rise of like Jeffrey Katzenberg and a lot of those Hollywood guys, where the only objective was to make as many movies as possible a year. Disney would have at that point multiple movies coming out the same weeks, because it wasn't really about winning the box office. It was about getting to DVD, which you could produce for 15 cents, sell for $15, like somewhere, like you said, somewhere between like $5 and $20. And everyone bought all of them. Like, they were basically just, it was like a cash printing business. As long as you could produce new movies, the movies didn't have to be good. And that's why, like, these brilliant guys who made all this money then went on to try to actually make good movies in a more competitive industry where your shit had to be good or people wouldn't see it. And you only had the theatrical release, and then it was kind of, your money was done. And a lot of them struggled because they were used to this thing where, like, is it a movie? Can we make it for under $50 million? Great, you're greenlit. Go, do it. Get it done. I just wanted to get to DVD as fast as possible, because that's when I just start cashing checks.
Well, Julio, let's backtrack a second here and just get your history on. You said you don't really like horror movies that much, but I guess, like, since we're talking about this specific era, what is your sort of takeaway from this time? Were you seeing these movies that we're talking about? Were you interested in them? Or, like, I mean, you can elaborate more just about your...
Julio's old like me, so...
So, yeah, I'm old like Harris. So, like, right around here is when I'm, like, 14, 15... And I was a super gay teenager, right? So I was watching, like, Adventures in Babysitting. and License to Drive.
I was watching all those movies, too.
Exactly. All of those movies. So I'm not a huge horror fan, not because when I actually sit down, I don't enjoy it. I think it's just because my sensibilities are a little bit more, like, pop and lighter and... but I love things like, I love, Nightmare on Elm Street and all the things that I think are classic horror. Like, I've seen all those and I've loved all those because, some Halloween, someone said you have to watch this. And I was like, all right, I'm going to watch it. And I, fell in love. But it's not like my go-to, right? Whereas, like, when I was in that age, Back to the Future, like, as I said before, was like my favorite trilogy, right? Because I would just, like, watch it and watch it and watch it over again. And then when they went to the Wild West and Back to the Future 3, like, I was pissed because it was such a departure from the first two, right? And you look at it relative to what you just said, and it wasn't that much of a departure, right? They were just going back in time, and that was a particular time that they went back to, right?
Yeah, I like 3 of Back to the Future more than anyone else I've ever met. I'm like, this is acceptable to me. I realize it's not as good as the first 2 or whatever, but I like the Old West. I'm down. Like, why not? Mad Dog Tannen, he spits a lot.
Yeah.
Why not?
No, what I love about it, though, is just the interconnectedness of the narrative, right? Like, to make sure that things that appear in 1 then appear in 3, or things that appear in 2. And obviously that one does it super well because it's all about, like, what images did we see and what time were we at? And then they reshoot scenes. Exactly. Like, you'd see the scene of him
What's
running
being
through the parking lot,
changed.
and you're like, oh, I saw that already in that movie, right?
And they have plants. They have plants from the second one that pay off in the third one, which is you know,
Totally.
a great move anytime you're doing a series.
Totally.
Well, because 2 and 3 were planned at the same time and they were shot kind of back to back. They were one of the few instances of that.
My
kinda thing.
biggest complaint with the third one is always that they're stuck in the Old West the entire time, and I'm like, oh, that seems like they could have done so much more. But I totally forget that the first one took place entirely in the 50s, and that doesn't bother me at all. So
Yeah.
it's a very,
Yeah.
it's kind of a silly. Julie, we'll have you back on when we do Back to the Future.
Yes, definitely.
But back to your question, Matt. Like, no, it's not that I don't like horror. It's just not my like first go-to, right? Which is why when I sat down to watch this movie, I was like, oh, this is going to be awful. And it wasn't, because it was like the History Channel, and I kind of like the History Channel.
Horror is
Yeah.
speaking to me as an older person much more than it ever did before, because I wasn't. I'm with you. I never used to watch horror movies when I was younger. Never used to enjoy them that much. And you know, you'd watch the staples, but it wasn't like I loved them. And now I'm starting to like. I think horror movies are some of the most inventive, interesting things that are being made now. So I'm like going back and trying to watch the older ones to educate myself, because I really think it's like, I mean, we're in a time of great anxiety as I think we've all independently discussed, you know, at this point. And that's when horror movies are kind of, you know, an important outlet to express that anxiety. And they're speaking to me a lot more. And I think they're really interesting. I don't think I ever appreciated them as much as I do now.
I think it's a good point. I think I was going to say, you know, once you turn 40 and you realize that life is just fucking scary. That
And,
like,
and
suddenly-
ending all the time.
ending all the time. Yeah, they
Wait
resonate
till you have
really
kidney stones.
differently.
But this movie is way closer to Underworld than it is to Nightmare on Elm Street to me.
That's such a weird apples and oranges dichotomy
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
draw. But should we get
to summarize the
Yeah, I
plot?
was going to say, Colin, you want to jump on that? And
Before we do that, I just want to throw in my Back to the Future 2 versus 3 tidbit. In a post-Trump world, I now find that I dislike Part 2 because
it's
Trump
way
is
worse in
obviously
real
the
life.
Biff.
Yeah.
Trump is Biff.
Yeah.
And
happened.
you know him. It's happened. Someone, I think Colin, like went to the future and got the sports almanac, and when he
Fucked
came
it up,
back,
Colin.
this
You
is the
fucked it
world that we live in now. Sorry. All right, let's summarize this
I
plot.
always felt like, even when I was younger, I always felt like who I was more in the Doc Brown kind of personality than the Marty McFly kind of personality. Even though I'm not a scientist,
it's good that you know yourself.
Yeah, I give off more of a Christopher Lloyd type of a vibe than a.
Like what I'm hearing is dumb Doc Brown, and I'm kind of like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Nailing it.
I wish I could be cool like fucking Doc Hollywood over there. You guys ever see Doc Hollywood?
Yeah, that's a good one. M. Emmett Walsh
Yeah,
is
that's a
great
good
in
one.
that. Who's the girl in that? Why can't I
don't know.
remember?
She kind of looks like.
All right, while Harris looks that up, Colin, do you want to summarize this plot?
Julie Warner. Who even knows who Julie Warner is? I think that's like the only thing she did, pretty much.
Yeah, she's like
She
only.
sounds-
on
you
that.
know, that name sounds
Oh my
familiar.
God! You know what she was in? Tommy Boy.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah, you see it now. Yes.
Yeah, two amazing movies.
Very good. Julie Warner had a brief but incredible career.
Bees. Is anyone else's favorite line from Tommy Boy? Bees.
It's so stupid.
That's actually a great movie. My favorite part of Tommy Boy is the entirety of Tommy Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Tommy Boy is almost a franchise because of Black Sheep.
We
We
can
just
pretend
do
it
those
is.
as a franchise. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Colin. No more preparation. Let's do this.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
All right, the movie starts out in like a way back flashback. Looks like the History Channel, and there's basically a bunch of people who had a big war and upside down crucified themselves, and everyone's dead except one guy. And we flash forward, and there's some guy, and he comes and he finds Father Merrin sitting in a bar getting fucking trashed, and trying to give off some like I'm like an alcoholic Indiana Jones type of vibe. And he's like, we need you to go dig up some stuff because you're an alcoholic Indiana Jones type of vibe. Also, you're a priest, aren't you? And he's like, no, I'm not a priest anymore. And then they like wink at each other, sort of, but not really. They don't actually wink at each other. Anyways, he goes and there's a church there and they're digging it up. And I gotta say, they're doing a great job of digging that thing out of the ground. They keep getting more and more of this church out of the ground. And shit is happening all over the place. Hyenas are eating people, for fuck's sake. It's like, how did they do that while all this was going on? My summary is totally fucked now.
Just go back.
Okay. So he goes to Africa with this guy who has like blotches on his skin, and then he meets this woman who's like the doctor there, and there's like a weird tension, and he also comes with a priest from the Vatican who is like, I'm watching this because I'm a priest or whatever. And one of the kids, it seems like he's possessed or touched by the devil, and there's some tribes people also, and they're like, we don't like you around here so much, Whitey, or we don't know about that. And obviously, like, the devil's getting loose, and this guy's like, I'm not a priest, I don't believe in this shit. And then eventually, he's like, a bunch of bad shit keeps happening, and he finds like, the demon's lair in the underdwelling of the church or whatever. And he's like,
The basement.
Yeah, the basement.
There's no basement in the Alamo.
Yeah, so they built this all to like cover it up that like the demon, the demon's loose here. This is where Lucifer fell from hell or whatever. So the demons are getting loose here. And this is where they tried to cover it up. And finally the other priest admits that. And the little boy, they try to exorcise the little boy while the British come and they have a big war with the tribes people because everyone's just pissed off and the devil's everywhere. And then he realizes it was the woman who was possessed the whole time, and she comes in with like, some special effects looking a lot like Linda Blair from the first one, and then they have a big showdown, and he fucking battles her with exorcist stuff. He basically just casts out the demon, and then they hand dig themselves out of this basement, which is impressive also. And everyone's dead, and they're like, oh fuck, we fucked up, but I'm pretty sure I am a priest actually now. And then he goes back to the guy from the beginning. He's like, I'm a priest now. And then he puts on the hat and the exact same clothes as the priest from the first movie so that we know for sure he is the priest from the first movie. And then in the end, everyone's fine.
Except for all the
I like how
people who
you
died.
end every summary with everyone's fine.
Yeah. I like that's my running theme is every time the movie ends, everything's fine.
Everything's
no
fine. That's
problem.
it. And then all the actors who died are done, and they come back to life, and they go on with their lives.
I would venture to say that on paper, the plot of this movie
Makes
is
sense.
really good. Yeah.
It's pretty short.
I think,
Kenya?
I
Was
think
this
it was
Kenya?
like a pop-up video history lesson while it was happening.
Yeah. Also.
Yeah. That would have helped because it already looked like a History Channel movie. This could have been a really good History Channel movie.
Well, a big part of this too, and this is something that I left out of my Exorcist summary, Julio. But in the previous movies, they've been reference to Father Merrin performing an exorcism on an African boy named what was his name? What was the James Earl
Kokomo.
Jones?
Kokomo.
Takumo. Kokumo.
We all said different things.
Yes, as we all said, Kokumo, who was played by James Earl Jones with like a giant locust headdress, which is not present at all in this. And Colin, I know you agree with me here.
Yeah,
this movie
that
gets
sucked.
This movie gets 100% better if he's wearing a giant paper mache locust headdress.
Oh hell
in this,
yeah!
yeah.
What was the kid's name? Wasn't it like Joel or something boring as fuck? Anyways, like
Joseph.
Joseph. Yeah.
Joseph.
Oh, Joseph.
Yeah.
That's more biblical.
Yeah.
Joel is a little less.
Yeah.
So they kind of retconned the kid that he exorcises here, but in the past this was a tribal kid who was named Kokumo, who became a great warrior for God.
But he wasn't
fighting
even the
the devil.
possessed one in this one. It was
Yeah.
all it was a red herring or whatever.
Yeah, it was a jerk
Yeah, it
off,
was a
as
red
they
herring.
say. in the industry parlance, a big old jerk off.
So, I mean, how should we tackle this thing? Should we talk about the cast, or should we jump right into the intricacies of the plot?
Since we revealed the end, like, I just want to laugh at how, like, I laughed
talk
out
about the
loud
end first.
Well, because
We'll go backwards.
yeah, but I laughed out loud when he puts the hat on and he's like, "I am a priest now." That's Father Merrin to you. I was just like, "What?"
Look at
like
my
we've
priest
already
hat.
kind of, yeah, we've already kind of talked about it. But like, they take this guy who was, at his best in the first movie, enigmatic, and they try to turn it into he was a badass.
And then,
It's not
in
the
case you
same
didn't
character.
get, in case you didn't get, because he had the same name and the same backstory that he was the same guy, he says that he's a priest now and puts on the same hat and the same bag. It's literally a hat on a hat.
They also planted like props in the final scene with the purple sash and the silver cross that like made it really clear that this is the same guy.
Yeah, I also think it's a bit of a trope now that like any movie that stars like a religious character who's like a priest or what have you, like the theme of the movie is always them, rekindling their faith. Like something happened to them and they no longer do what they do, and then by the end of the movie, the devil will sway them or something.
It's like a crisis of faith trope, basically. Like
yeah.
I kind of want to write a movie now that's about a priest who's like really dedicated and totally into his faith, and then at the end he's like into metal bands and he's like, "Fuck this church shit."
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean metal bands? What are you implying about metal bands, Harris?
That they love Satan because Satan rules. Haven't you seen that on the front of my notebook, Colin? I've been doodling that for ages.
Do you guys like that Mountain Goats song? Have you ever heard that one? Mm-mm. It's called Best Ever Metal Band out of Denton, which is like Denton, Texas, which is where I went to school. But you've never heard the song?
I have not.
It's just check it out. You'll see. It's
not
not a metal
broad.
song.
Come on, Colin.
It's not a metal song. It's like
sing a verse or two.
It's like a folk song. I don't want to do. I don't want to do it. I'm scared.
I'm not gonna beg you, but
I'm loving this bit, Colin.
Just check it out. Well, okay, so like the Mountain Goats song is basically about these two kids who start a metal band in their garage or like rooms or whatever, and it's a story about how they basically like just wanted to make music and be famous, and the outside world like throws them in a sanitarium and a special school or whatever, and tries to discipline them, and then the chorus is like "Hail Satan."
Cool.
Great. Cool. Julia, did you have any takeaways from this movie, or like things that you thought worked really well or maybe didn't, or like what were some of the highlights or lowlights for you?
Well, a low light for me, I think, was the actual Exorcist spell or incantation, whatever you want to call it, that he says to her. Because here she is, like, fully possessed, right? And she's got that really intense makeup on now. And she's basically going to tear him a new fucking hole, right? And he just whispers in her ear, like, I am good and you're evil. I just was expecting something much more powerful and much more like, I don't know, maybe like chanting, or maybe there was some sort of like Latin phrasing or something like that, right? Instead, it was basically just like, Hail Mary, full of grace. And then she was gone. Like, it was, I thought it was a strange climax.
Like shaking holy water and going, power of Christ compels you or something. That's like, that's the traditional Exorcist
That's
stuff.
the part people know.
Yeah. That's what the people want.
I was expecting something more intense, is my point.
In the original Exorcist movie, they have to like tie her down to the bed to like keep her from killing them. Basically. Yeah. And this woman has free range to like move all over the place. Nothing suspending her, nothing holding her back at all in her own dungeon that she knows.
As long as she doesn't run into the invisible wall.
And immediately when I saw that this is what was going to go down, I was like, well, this isn't going to make sense because he should lose because she's not tied down. And he won anyways. But, I mean, the power of Christ compelled him, I guess. I don't know.
This is a deep pull, but do you know the part when she's in the tunnel and like suddenly she's like a mile away from him and she's like
Then she
slowly
starts
running?
Yeah.
She's running with her arms flailing, kind of.
Was there one of those moving
dress
sidewalks from the airport underneath her, like going the wrong way or something?
the wrong way? Yeah. Well, my deep pull was like, did anyone else get reminded of the false Jessica Rabbit in her running? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I didn't, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that's good. It's a good call. I was getting real Evil Dead vibes from that moment. That's what I was just like, the whole like sort of zooming at somebody and her going crazy.
Now I want to see like a fight in an airport where someone's charging at someone and they're on the moving walkway that's going the wrong way.
Wait, two people are charging at each other, but one of them is being accelerated and one of them is being pushed in the wrong direction.
It reminds me of like I always thought it would be cool to have a movie like maybe it takes place in like behind the scenes Hollywood kind of thing, but like the epic fight scene of the movie ends up happening in a prop room. So it's like, they're just smashing each other with shit that like looks really hard, but really it's like all breakaway stuff. I always thought that would be.
Oh, it's like if somebody had an epic fight in a museum of glass objects.
I knew you were gonna go there.
What is that? The Spy Who Loved Me? I
Moonraker.
Can't even remember. Moonraker, of course. Yes.
Yeah,
of course.
The scene's awesome.
I knew it had to be something stupid.
That scene's the one that ends with him killing the guy by dropping him on the piano and then saying, "Play it again, Sam."
yeah, it was so dumb.
So
dumb.
let's jump into some of the performances in this movie. I guess we have to start with Father Merrin, played by someone else. Say his name.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Like watching this movie, I was just taken back to how upset I was at Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol for casting a villain who was just like an off-brand version of this guy. This guy would have killed it in that role. And I'm still mad. I'm still, still processing that.
Yeah, don't let that anger go. I think it's very justified. he's definitely. Well, they cast somebody who also like looked a little like him.
Yeah, that's
too,
what it was. They cast a guy who looked like him and was just less famous and didn't bring as much to the role. And it was like, you should have just got him. This movie, he was in Exorcist 4 in 2004, and
yeah, seriously, what was he
Ghost
doing?
Protocol was made in like 2009.
Yeah, like he was booked on some Lars von Trier movie. Like, really, is it?
Yeah,
Wait, have you guys seen Breaking the Waves?
I have.
It's like one of the most like hard. It's like a very difficult movie to watch. It's
as almost all Lars von Trier movies are.
Yes. But it's one of his better ones, I think. You guys should check that out. I won't go into too much detail.
It's not about surfing?
Kind of.
No, yes, it is. It is, Colin. It's all about surfing. This is sort of Stellan Skarsgård's like American
breakthrough.
Like he's established himself in America at this point because he was in, like, obviously he was in a lot of movies. Good Will Hunting, for instance. I think Insomnia, the original version, not the remake, was like his kind of breakout role as a foreign film.
I feel like a lot of people were sleeping on that one.
No. Boo.
Boo.
But then he was in Ronin. He had a very memorable part in Ronin, Deep Blue Sea.
Oh, Deep Blue Sea. That's where I know him from.
Yeah. So that's like, and then he was in like Dogville. Like by that time, Lars von Trier had kind of moved to the American side of things. So that was all before this movie came out. So he was kind of an established actor for American audiences.
I mean, I thought he was really good. I mean, I really thought he was engaging and totally captivating. The only problem I had with his performance was the grave digging scene. Right? Because it wasn't really, it wasn't really like he was overdoing it. The movie was just overdoing it at that point.
I totally agree with that 100%. Honestly, digging a hole is not something you should ask actors to do in a film. Like, as a general rule.
It shouldn't be an important part of your plot.
Yeah.
In any story. If you have people digging several holes. Well, also, it seems like he's digging one hole all night. and it's kind of like he's laboring to find out what's at the bottom of this hole. And then as the sun comes up, he's like, "Ooh, I've hit a casket and I've made a discovery, and now I'm going to find out the secret." And then he goes back a few minutes later. He's like, "I dug up 5 graves."
Yeah.
It's like,
no, you didn't.
Yeah. So like after dawn, you dug up 4 more. It took you all night, or were you just really excited that the 5th grave you dug up at dawn was going to be the one that actually
Once he
had a
got to
body
the
in it,
bottom,
you know?
he dug sideways.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. He was like, you never know. I don't know. Don't want to jump to conclusions. A little hasty. I got to be honest with you guys. I would have dug up the first one and saw there was no body in it, and then told people that I dug up like a second one to verify. But I never would have dug it. I would just been like, there's no body in this one. I'm just going to assume that they're all
I would have
empty.
been so pissed if I found no body at the bottom of that. I'd just been like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's like a grave robber's worst nightmare.
But here's
so
my
did-
question about that whole thing. Why are there even coffins in the ground if it's fake?
Right.
Good point. Why are there even 6-foot deep holes?
Why are there just crosses in a field?
Why did they bury the empty coffins? Who had to do that?
Yeah, work smarter, not harder, Vatican conspiracists.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense either. 'Cause the tribes people don't want to talk about it, but I think someone at the tribe would want to complain. Like, yeah, they're obviously some of the best, land movers digging, labor in the world. Clearly, from what we've seen in the movie, and no one's gonna complain that they had to fucking dig these holes just to put empty caskets in them.
Right, they're trying to keep this big secret, but like,
Yeah.
how many people did they have to hire to like bury these things?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they not know that they were empty?
And nobody talked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Now, wouldn't it have been better if he just kept digging under the cross and digging and digging and digging? And
yeah, just
Yeah,
gotta
I've
make
gone
sure.
20 feet
Never,
down.
Like 5 days later, he's still digging.
Yeah.
He's like, it's getting warmer. I think I'm nearing the core of the earth and have still not found the casket. Dear diary, it's been many months.
I was about to say, then you turn the camera upside down and you hire a few Chinese actors. Wait, but
Great.
the other side of the world from Africa isn't China, so I
So those are the graves that are the theoretical graves from the opening scene, or no?
What do you mean? They're the same. They're the graves that they see when they first drive up to the facility.
Right, no, but I mean, who are the bodies that are supposed to be buried there? The people from the opening battle? I can't even remember.
No, the people from when they discovered that there was a church there, because it was like the.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the battle happened, and then they buried everything under a big church, and the church is supposed to like keep a seal, and then they
right,
buried
yeah,
that.
Yeah. The church was built after
And
that
someone was
crazy
like,
battle.
"There's something here," and the Vatican came, and they were like, "Cover it up. Let's build a bunch of fake graves. That'll keep people
Right.
away." And then again, they found the church again, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, which is totally unrealistic that the Vatican would cover something up. I mean,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Everyone knows that the Catholic Church is pretty upfront about all their mistakes.
yeah.
The opening of this movie, I thought was like, that's when I got that same tingle that I'm sure Colin's familiar with, and it's like, I mean, first of all, you've got like Chris Hemsworth in Thor: The African Crusades, stumbling through the desert there. They do the classic like early 2000s computer aided impossible crane pull out
Right,
shot
where it's
that like
you go
zoom-
from like one guy to like
right, starts in tight on
Yeah.
one guy and like slowly starts zooming back to show a battlefield full of corpses and bodies and everything, and then it just gets faster and faster, and at one point I think it zooms directly through an upside down cross. And it's like, just like, they're not even trying to replicate actual
Movement.
physical possibility or anything, and it's all very like, all the CGI is very muddy, and it's just kind of like they're obviously just cloning bodies over and over again. It's like it reminds me of like Gladiator-esque in terms of like kind of trying to do too much when your technology's not there.
and they already had
Right.
those hyena blobs in there that were just kind of like gray little moving
Right.
things.
Like
Yeah.
blurry
Yeah.
little blobs.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of other movies that did this, but I just know I've seen this
Yeah.
so many times of like the rapid camera flying over something in a way that a camera can't actually fly.
Yeah, like David Fincher did it once in Panic Room, and everyone was like, "We have to do this."
And everyone was like, "This is great. We're gonna do." And even if you watch Panic Room, which I've actually seen recently, you're like, "Ah, yeah, that's like pushing the limits of technology, and it doesn't quite
Yeah.
work." And there's a reason David Fincher never did it again.
This movie suffers from being from the time period, where CGI was still a new toy that everyone wanted to play with. And, this is like post Lord of the Rings. All 3 movies are out at this time. This is post.
Yeah, they did a lot of this.
Yeah,
too.
this is post, the Star Wars prequels, which, these movies had major budgets and, created Gollum, characters like Gollum and Jar Jar Binks, who, say what you will about him, but like he's a fully CGI rendered character that looks all right. Maybe today he's a little dated, but I mean,
it's very gracious.
Nothing compared to, I mean, at least Gollum. I'll say Gollum looks good.
Gollum's tight. Yeah, Gollum works.
But this movie obviously had a very small budget, comparatively to those movies that I just mentioned.
They didn't have Gollum.
No,
money.
they didn't have Gollum money. And I mean, they wanted to use some CGI. Like, I mean, what would they have done 10 years earlier for a scene with hyenas? I guess just not written it. But they would have brought in.
Well, you could have cut around it. You would have had some actual live animals and some animatronics, and then you just would have cut around.
You would never have the hyenas in the same shot, like not the real hyenas in the same shot. You'd have the animatronic hyenas,
right, with the kid.
in the same
Yeah,
shot.
you'd see like a
you would
paw
actually,
go like this, like on the screen,
Yeah, you'd have like a dummy body with some hyena bait on it, and you'd have them eating that, and then you'd cut to the kid in close up with some hyena like hyena chompers that people are like put like hyena puppets.
Yeah.
That's like what you do. It would also look shitty, but it would look
more
like
believable,
real and
Or
shitty.
you'd have people. You'd
it
have
would look
people
like
in
tactile.
hyena outfits, like in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like at the beginning of 2001, you'd have like hyena men.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point because the beginning of 2001: A Space Odyssey actually has actual hyenas attacking stuntmen in ape outfits, where they're actually like jumping on them and chewing on them. So that's what you would have done. You would have had a tiny stuntman in an African boy outfit being attacked by.
I heard for this
hyenas.
movie they actually tried that. They had actors in hyena costumes, and it was Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin.
I get that joke.
Nicely done. Our home audience can't see me applauding you for that. That was very, very.
No, the moment Harris said something earlier, I just pictured like 2 filmmakers talking to each other, and one is saying, "Where do you get your hyena bait, man?"
Yeah, who's your hyena bait guy?
guy? Oh yeah,
It's actually the same guy as my dove guy. All the old doves just become hyena bait.
yeah. Yeah.
So since we're on the hyenas already, I guess let's just switch gears and talk about the CGI. In the rest of the movie, what we think of it.
I think. Can I just end it there?
I mean, the hyenas were the low point.
Honestly, the butterfly or the moth crawling out of the guy's mouth was the low.
That
For
was
me,
bad.
that was like the hyenas were terrible, but they were like terrible in action-y sequences. The moth crawling out of his mouth or the butterfly crawling out of the guy's mouth at the end was like, oh, that looks like somebody drew something onto him with like a flash animation program.
I didn't really need that scene either. Like, I wasn't really
Yeah.
invested in the whole like colonial battle with the natives because.
And who
like,
was that guy? Who cared about him?
They needed a higher body count, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, that's what it was, and that's why they hired Rennie Harlan, because apparently Schrader's version like has no deaths, it has no like gore or anything,
except
and
for
they
the little
wanted-
girl and the Nazis. What about the Nazi thing?
Yeah, that's kind of shocking. I don't know. Maybe he
They
didn't.
just kept shooting her over and over and over again.
Yeah, it was just 30 minutes of that loop. But yeah, so they brought Rennie Harlan in to like gore this movie up, and so I guess they added the hyena sequence and just a lot of children death in this movie. They really
The
had
stillborn
one
A
baby.
lot
kid.
of maggots. So many.
Right? Yeah. Oh, let's talk about the stillborn baby.
Can we talk? Should we talk about that? Oh my god.
An image.
A scene
no
that
one needs to
holds
see.
no water for anything in the movie. Like it's like we don't know who that character is. She's never been mentioned before.
It riles up the tribes people. It's the chief's wife giving birth to the chief's son, and the chief's son is stillborn, but not just stillborn. He's born with like maggots crawling all over him. And the lady who gives like the woman who gives birth to him, like the
midwife?
Midwife,
the
yeah.
midwife who is delivering the baby, is like, her expression is hard to read. I don't know what her direction was, because she seems really excited and like happy. She's like, "Here's your baby," and she turns him around and he's like got maggots crawling out of his body and he's dead. And it's like talk about a horrifying. That was the single. There wasn't a lot that was scary or like upsetting about this movie.
That was though.
But that was like haunting my dreams for days afterwards. But like not in a fun, like scary movies way. Like in a
disturbing.
Like
yuck.
Just
the
stop,
word yucky
please.
comes to mind.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, yuck and no and.
I mean, I will say that I think as a character thing to add to Father Merrin, to have him be a part of, you know, a Nazi camp and like having to murder people, you know, essentially for no reason, as part of his background, like struggle. I think that's a really cool, interesting, like character flaw, like, or character, you know, beat to introduce.
I think the movie really got ahead of itself by trying to have that story and the story about the colonial British versus the native tribe, because we saw so much of his personal story for the beginning of the movie that, yeah, we had already forgot about who this British commander guy is, and those scenes were all just like gross and they seemed unnecessary, and they didn't seem to be part of the same story we had going on. And then you got him digging a hole, and it's like, you don't watch your actors dig holes. Like, you just say they dug a hole and cut.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't feel like the British. Feel like it wouldn't have been missing much, because think about it. All the other ones, you know, even the biggest other ones are all kind of still small stories. They're like about a single person in a single, like a one-on-one conflict, and this brings in this whole other war.
I think it
just for like the body.
I think
count,
it adds to the lore of the demon, but it, like, for the story we're seeing in this film, it's a little bit confusing because it's like there's, you know, parallel things going on that aren't tied together well.
I do wish the CGI looked better, only because there were moments that were good. Like the hyenas were like good ideas, you know? And even the part with the kid getting torn up, like where they attack the boy, where it's like there's way too much light and the hyenas just, they move like ridiculously fast and it's just not natural. And yet when that kid is getting like ripped into 5 different pieces by several hyenas, I was like, oh, this is pretty, like, this is a horrifying concept, if not a horrifying execution.
What sells it is the kid's performance, his screaming and whatever. He's, you know, doing a good job. They actually murdered him for this movie.
Yeah. He was the greatest child actor ever, and unfortunately, he could never be cast in anything after this.
And Stella is complaining that he had to dig.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Asshole.
Yeah. I also thought, like, the when he goes back into the church and there's all those crows have taken over the church, and like 2 crows are eating a 3rd crow, and he steps near it and it flinches, like the crow that's being eaten like comes alive and starts moving. Like, I thought that was like an awesome creepy idea, and also it should have been done somehow that didn't look fake and computer animated, you know, like that didn't look like a stupid crow cartoon.
I thought of a really good joke about the kid who we were just talking about. you know it sucks after you're torn into pieces when you can't get a good part.
What?
Because he was ripped into parts, so it's like a.
That was good. I like that one. That was
Yeah.
good.
Okay. Thank
I like
you,
how that
Julio.
went over Harris's head.
I thought it was a knock-knock joke.
I just want to say Julio's been one of the best guests that we've had for laughing at my one joke.
You just say that because he hasn't said anything in the last couple of minutes. He's letting you tell your stupid jokes and laughing at him.
I'm great. It's late. It's Friday night. I got my bourbon. I'm happy.
Yeah, you look like you're doing well. What do we think about Jeffries, my favorite character in this?
See the guy with the stuff on his face?
Jeffries.
What is that guy from? I really recognized him, and I was like, "What? Oh, you know what? Is he in Lock, Stock, or Snatch or something as like the gangster guy?"
Yeah.
He's the one who feeds them to the pigs or hyenas, I guess.
He's in
Yeah.
both of them, but he's Bricktop in
Yeah,
Snatch.
he feeds the people to the pigs.
Yeah, that's his more famous.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I know him from. Although he was also in Lock, Stock.
He was in Cheers. That's actually Woody Harrelson. He's just looking really
Yeah.
bad lately.
He's come a long way.
My favorite line in this movie, and maybe any movie, is
This movie
when he
holds the
goes-
distinction of having your favorite line.
maybe in any movie ever. It's a line that I wish I wrote. It's so good. When the doctor walks in and he goes, I've been having this swelling in the evenings, and he points to his crotch, and then he goes, thought you might have something you could
Yeah.
put on it. And I was like, yes, what a great, like, what an amazing piece of
The
writing.
character is so disgusting, and that really like seals the
So
deal of him
gross.
being gross.
Yeah.
Also,
And she just plays it off
That's like
like,
one of his,
oh, you.
It's one of his first lines. It's like, in case you didn't know who this guy is, this is
well,
this
one
guy.
of the weirdest, funniest parts about this movie, and I wrote it down in my notes, was so this guy, he's obviously a weird stalker for this woman, and he's doing weird shit. At one point, he sneaks into bed with her to whisper in her ear in the middle of the night. And the only thing I noticed about this scene is when we get the wide shot, he's tucked himself into the covers. Why would you do that?
Hey, maybe it was cold.
What?
Yeah.
If you're gonna do that move, I don't see you tucking yourself into the covers. Also,
How does she not wake up from him doing that?
Exactly. And then she gets up and she's all scared, and then he almost kind of acts like he's put upon to have to like untuck himself in. It's like you just
he's still
like-
he's still being agitated.
threaten this woman with sexual assault, and you're put upon because you have to get out from under the covers. What the fuck is wrong with you?
He came there because he had given her a medallion earlier as a present, and he did it in the grossest way possible to give a person a gift. And she reluctantly accepted it, and then he finds it on the ground, and he goes there to confront her about throwing it on the ground, and she says the latch broke. But, like, this is all in the context of he goes there to confront her about this, and his way of confronting her is to quietly sneak into her bed and spoon her in her sleep
So
until
gross.
she wakes up in horror. Yeah.
This character's so disgusting.
And then he's immediately like fired up again. She wakes up, she's shocked, she's horrified, she's upset, she's scared, and he's like, "Hey, I found this medallion in the den."
Yeah, his voice, his accent, it's so thick. It's just, I mean, it's so gross. Like, we're laughing, and the stuff we're saying doesn't really sound that funny, but it's taken to such an over the top level that it's like, I cannot believe
It's
this.
such a dumb idea executed so dumbly.
So dumb.
He's put upon to come out from under the covers. Come on. Why did he tuck himself in?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
the fuck?
Yep. Yeah.
See, I thought she
Seriously.
was gonna tempt him more, not him, Merrin. I thought it was
Yeah.
gonna be like a
A much more seductive sort of pursuing of him, right? And then
It also, none of this makes sense in the context of her actually being the demon all along. You know, like all this, like it's one of those things like if you watch The Sixth Sense again and you see Bruce Willis buying gas and like talking to other people and like doing his taxes and stuff, you'd be like, oh wait, he's not actually a ghost. This doesn't make any sense. And on rewatch, like her being the demon all along does not make
It doesn't
any sense
track
on a
at
rewatch
all.
because
Yeah, I actually realized, like, after the fact, I sat and thought about the movie, and I'm like, what was that whole scene with her in the shower and then, like, the blood on the floor and stuff? Like, that was a total red herring. It's a cheat. Yeah.
it's a cheat of her being scared of the demon when she is actually the demon
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
along. Yeah.
It makes
It
no
reveals that she had a hysterectomy or something because she's like, I'm not supposed to be able to bleed like that.
Oh, can we talk about that fucking scene? I mean, not the scene where she bleeds all over the place, because she basically says that she's like, the demon is causing her to have.
That was a lot of blood.
Horrible-
That would kill her.
Yeah.
But
Let's talk
moving
about the
on.
scene where she is seducing Merrin. I think it's a great scene. We should actually talk about the actress too, because we know her.
Oh,
from a
we sure
movie,
do.
Yeah.
Before. Yes, she is from famous from our Bondcast days. She is Natalya Semenova from
Goldeneye.
Goldeneye. Yeah, does not look. I didn't until you said that. I was like, what is she from? I know
She's
I've
got
seen her
different
in
hair.
something.
That's it.
Yeah.
The bangs are a terrible look for her. But she has this seduction scene where she is confessing, because they both lived through World War II, and she was in a concentration camp because her father was harboring their Jewish neighbors and trying to protect them. And Father Merrin, of course, was a priest who lost his faith when he saw the Nazis executing people for no reason. So they have this in common, and they're bonding. And she confesses that the Nazis did terrible things to her, and it's implied through that in another scene that she was rendered sterile through Nazi
A hysterectomy of some kind. Yeah.
chicanery. Yeah, some kind of bad shit
Yeah.
went down. And immediately after her saying this, like literally the next line, she's like, so the Nazis sterilized me, but what about you? What made you become a priest? You know,
Yeah.
like she becomes like totally flirtatious and is like, so you're an archaeologist now. Why aren't you a priest anymore? Tell me all about that. So tell me more about you. I feel like I'm going on and on about the Nazis and what happened to me.
Yeah,
You know?
I feel like off camera, what was going on is like the director was like, yeah, we hired her because she's hot and she can be seductive, and also the direction we're giving her is like, be seductive with this priest guy. And I feel like she was probably coming back with like, be seductive with a priest. Are you sure? Like how? I'm not really sure how to do that. I'm not. You know, they're priests. And the director was like, also, here's the lines you have to read. And she was like, oh, this is about me having a hysterectomy by Nazis and I'm seductive. And the director's like, yeah, correct. We're rolling.
Yes, this is correct.
We're rolling. Can you stop asking questions, please?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you got everything you need, and go.
Can you do it in one take? Oh, man.
So we also have a couple other characters. We have the crazy guy.
Which crazy guy?
The crazy former head of the dig.
Oh, yeah, that
when he
scene
goes
was
to
fucked.
visit
Oh, that scene was pretty scary, actually.
That scene was
That was
fucked.
scary, I think.
That was a gory scene.
That was
yeah.
that was one of the better ones.
But I thought that was executed so well, actually. I thought that like his being possessed and then sort of like doesn't he kill himself, right? So he like sort of like
Yeah.
just is
He stabs
bleeding
himself in the
everywhere.
throat.
I
and-
thought that was really,
Yep.
really, really like that. I can watch and actually appreciate and enjoy. It's as soon as you get to maggots that I'm out.
I
Blood,
felt
it doesn't matter.
I felt the reaction of the staff of the sanitarium was
Totally
very
right.
subdued.
A little.
Very subdued.
Very.
Oh, this again.
This happens all the
Not
time.
again.
Tony, get the mop.
Get the mop. I feel like we're going back to the blue collar exorcist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
exactly.
can you get the demons out of him? Because we got a mop guy. We got a mop guy. If you can't get the demon out, he's gonna mop up the blood.
Ah, it's another possession. Sometimes it's best to just let these things play out. Sometimes it's not a big deal. They just kill themselves, and it's like whatever. Okay.
Look, you can hire me for the exorcism, or you're gonna have to have somebody come in and mop this up.
I don't do both, honey.
You got to ask yourself: do you really want him exercised, or you're just trying to get this out of your hair? Because the cleanup's gonna be cheaper. I'll tell you that. I'm gonna be honest. It's not good for me business-wise.
Question for you. Do you have any Lysol in the house? You're going to need some.
You could do the cleanup yourself, but I would not recommend it. The vomit alone.
Look, usually I would have to get another priest in here, another exorcist to help me with this.
a young one and an old one, yeah.
But
you
I can
know.
do it for you with this young African boy here. We've got.
Yeah. I thought he was possessed, and now he's my sidekick. I don't know. It's a long story. What I'm saying is he works cheap. You know what I mean? I'm paying him under the table, and I'm passing the savings along to you.
Oh, God. Julia, what else you got? Do you have notes? Did you take notes?
Did I take notes? The notes I took were that I actually I thought, because, my brain works as a writer, right? So, like, I just thought the progression of the actual threat of the demon was really, really well done, right? So, like, it starts to creep into the movie, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger. And actually, the blood scene from the former director, I thought was actually like super intense for that point in the movie, but it really like got me going, right? Like I was in by that point, and loved it. And I think that's why I was super disappointed in the end that like his struggle against her was just his 5 or 6 words, and he has the cross around him. Because I thought it was going to be
That he already did earlier, and it didn't work.
And it didn't
was
work.
a fake
Exactly.
out.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
it works the second
Totally.
time, and it's like, what the?
Totally. So I
Yeah.
was like ready for a larger clash at the end, but no, I thought like story structure wise, I loved it. I thought that it was like it was actually a really good model for some of the things I'm working on right now. But just like completely seeing like completely different than anything I usually watch.
For your Exorcist movie?
Exactly.
Your Exorcist prequel that you're
For
working
my-
on?
For my
Takes
prequel
place
to
in
my-
Staten Island.
Exactly.
With the blue collar exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So here's the question. This movie, we're all talking about it in such a way that we all seem to like it. We like a lot of the we like the story, and the execution for the most part is pretty good. The only thing that we seem to dislike is obviously the CGI, which is just a result of an unfortunate byproduct of the time period that this movie came out.
I think it also gets a little bit ahead of itself with the parallel
Too
stories
much
of the
happening. Yeah. It's got something like an 18% or something. Do we think that it deserves to be that low?
The
on the Rotten
reviews for
Tomatoes?
this movie
don't
were
think so.
awful.
Yeah.
It was panned.
Listen, the third act is a fucking mess, though. I mean, you can't ignore that. Once you get to the end of the movie, we don't know the stakes, we don't know the rules, and then the stakes and the rules don't end up mattering. And that's what's the most unsatisfying thing. Like, forget about the CGI, which sucked, but that's like a product of the time. But like, what my problem was at the end, I didn't know why he was doing what he was doing, what he was trying to prevent, and how he was trying to do it. And then, like we said, he exorcises her. She's cured. The kid won't go near her. The kid who's helping him with the exorcism, who he thought was a demon, but it turns out it's her, won't go near her. And then he realizes, oh no, she's just fake cured. And then they have their fight in the tunnel where she runs at him. And he does the same exact fucking, like, she hits the invisible wall, and he does the same exact fucking thing, and it works this time. But it's like, why does it work this? It's just like, none of it makes any fucking sense. And that's the real problem with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to the end, it doesn't finish strong.
Right.
A good ending would have made this, like a decent level for me. But instead, it goes from funny and cheesy and dumb, but good, to funny and cheesy but kind of boring and bad.
I also didn't track what was that thing, the object he was looking for, right? Which he never actually looks for throughout the movie. Like, we never really see him looking for that thing. And then at the end, we never see him get it. And then he goes back and is basically like, I didn't...
He gets it and he loses.
He puts it down on the
Exactly, in
sand for a second.
But then he loses it.
He puts it down on the sand because something bad happened, because the best character in this movie, Chuma, his sidekick and like African guide guy, turns into a fucking quarrel at a point in the movie where I thought that was off the table.
Oh,
where
yeah.
There was no way Chuma
They
would
should
be a
have killed
quarrel.
that guy.
Julio, for any listeners who haven't listened to all our Bond casts, Quarrel is the Bond character who is the black sidekick. Doesn't have to be black, but he's a sidekick who is like the trusted, loyal sidekick who then gets killed unceremoniously.
Right, the audience
Lovable
loves it.
and
great.
gonna be dead.
Yeah, he's the best character in the movie, and then he gets killed for stupid reasons at the end. And this is Chuma was one of the most quarrels ever. And also he facilitates this point where Stellan Skarsgård, for whatever reason, I should call him Father Merrin, I guess it's not an actor, but he puts down this idol this precious thing that he's like, he can't stuff that thing in his fucking pocket. He puts it in the sand, and the sand consumes it and sucks it back up into the earth. And I guess that's because, doesn't he excavate that in the original Exorcist?
Right. So like, yeah,
he has to lose it at some point because he finds it again in the first Exorcist movie, where it's just like this random thing.
yeah.
But this is sort of planting something that pays off in the original movie.
Right.
And that's great, but why does he have to lose it in such a stupid way?
I don't know, it's stupid.
And why did you have to kill Chuma, you bastards?
How does Chuma get killed? He gets shot, right? He opens the door and just gets blown away.
He gets
speared.
He shoots a guy. It's a spear versus machine gun fight, and Chuma somehow loses that fight or fights to a draw. It's fucking terrible.
But you got it totally right when you're talking about like the stakes and the rules are all totally off. And I feel like they were just kind of following a playbook. Like, we have to plant things that will pay off because we're a prequel, and we have to have it be this kind of final battle showdown to make it the kind of movie that we're making. But if you look at the original Exorcist movie, there was a huge struggle to even just get this demon to jump into the other priest, and then that guy has to kill himself to get rid of it. And they have to have her tied down, and it's this huge struggle. And then this guy is just basically like, he's in the place where Lucifer fell. Like, they totally upped the stakes in terms of like how bad this situation is. And then they totally like move the goalpost on the rules to where, he just needs to say the stuff from the book and the demon will jump
just
out.
Whisper some prayers.
And
exactly. And in the original, the other thing was that it was like, we weren't exactly clear on how they're on everything, but we at least knew the capabilities of the demon, that it was legitimately dangerous, and what the priest could or couldn't do to fight it, and that we just don't have that here established.
Yeah.
I do feel like it follows a playbook for the kind of movie it's trying to be. Like what I was talking about. Like this is in the vein of the like goth intellectual property sequel movie of the 2000s. It's like, okay, we need to build up to a showdown in the end. Like it's the third act. It's him versus the demon. Like that simplistic understanding of the story is very much in that vein. But it also doesn't work here because it's like, okay, he needs to win. And then they try to convince you he's a badass at the end by him going, it's Father Merrin.
It's Father Merrin if you're nasty.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my notes to see if there's anything that we forgot.
Well, we haven't talked about the young priest at all in this.
Oh, yeah.
Should we mention him? We also haven't mentioned Walder Frey.
Oh, yeah. he didn't have a very big part. I was like, oh, here we go. This guy's going to get
that's right.
He was just in that one scene.
I'll tell you what one of my notes is. When he goes under the church to the place where Lucifer fell, and he sees the demon statue of Pazuzu, and it's a demon statue we've seen before. In fact, you can even see this demon statue in my Zoom background right now.
Right.
And you know what's different about the demon statue in my Zoom background right now?
Huge erection.
Huge erection. He's got a big snake boner. What I'm wondering in this, and this is a serious question, why isn't Pazuzu's snake dick hard? Like, they're toning it down for us. Like, we can handle the full snake boner. Give us the full snake boner. I can take that entire snake boner.
Rennie Harlan was like, the boner would be too distracting. It would make people not think of the little girl getting shot in the head.
And it ends up being a flaccid snake penis. And that is just not the Pazuzu I know, you know?
It's not what we want to see.
Here's something that I thought was like confusing and stupid about the script. After we see Bession, the guy who kills himself by stabbing himself in the throat right in front of this guy, he leaves and talks to the Walter Frey priest, and the Walter Frey priest is like, you should really give priesting a chance, boy, or guy, or whatever. And he's like, I don't know still. And then he goes back to the camp, and the woman's like, what happened? Did you see Bession? And he's like, I don't know. And then they just move on in the conversation. It's like, you saw him kill himself in front of you. What do you mean you don't know?
He lies to her. He says he died, but he doesn't know how. And I was like, and this is my question from like a story perspective. Why? Why does he lie to her?
What purpose does it serve for him to say I don't know?
Oh, he didn't want to upset her?
They're not pulling that off.
Yeah, exactly. He said he said that he died. And also, we find this is another thing that doesn't add up in the sense of, you know, in retrospect, what makes sense in this movie and what doesn't. We learn later that this guy, Bession, who was the former dig architect who killed himself, was actually her husband. And, like, nobody mentions this.
Yeah.
All the people who, like, you know, Chuma and Jeffries and all the other people who are aware of this never seem to mention this to Father Merrin.
And there's definitely an opportunity in that conversation to plant something about it. Instead, it's just like, I don't know. Let's move on with something else to talk about. You know? Like,
yeah. It's such a cheat.
Well, we talked about CGI, but we haven't talked about Photoshop, because that moment where you look at those old photos of them married as a couple, that is some bad photoshopping.
I think this is a trend in movies that started around this time period when like Photoshop became a thing. And they were like, hey, we don't need to hire these actors to come in on a day and shoot a family photo. We can just crop their heads onto pictures.
Just put an oval around them, crop it out, and stick their face on it.
And this is a thing that is still done in movies today, and I hate it.
It's like that face was cut and paste onto an old photo.
It was taken from the Goldeneye poster.
Yeah. She's got the red hair. Yeah. There's a tank in there somehow.
You could see like the side of Pierce Brosnan's head, like on the side of the photo.
Pierce Brosnan's the best man.
Yeah.
No, I've never. I don't think I used Photoshop in 2004, so I can't testify to that far back. But like, Photoshop hasn't advanced that much. It doesn't like do that much It doesn't do that much
True.
different. It's a little easier to use.
And there were
but the basic
Photoshop
function is
techniques
still
that
the
were
same.
analog also, like before. Yeah.
Right, exactly. There were lots of ways to do this that didn't involve it
You
looking
could have
shitty.
taken hyenas and put them in human costumes. There were options.
There was a huge like hyena subplot that they cut from this movie. Too many actors in suits. It was just ridiculous.
I've got a randomly specific question that I probably should have taken a screenshot of to show you guys. But when the army shows up to oppress this native rebellion, they drive through a gated door, and it's like so this compound that they're in is like this, you know, stucco walls around an area where they're fenced in, and it's a fort. And then they have this wooden gated door that's a high gated door that all the trucks drive through. It's a very narrow gateway. Did any of you notice that when the gate closes, it doesn't close flush, so the doors are even? It closes so it's like an inverted V that points into the compound. And if you're going to make a door like that, you should at least do it so it points out, so it's hard to push the door in. Because the way it's pointed right now, it's like it's the easiest thing to overrun in the world.
I didn't notice this either.
So there was a lot of scenes like this, like where when they did wide shots where most of what was in frame was computer generated, I kind of looked away. So
I averted my eyes.
This door is definitely real, and my theory is that they got their measurements wrong and built the walls too close together, so when they built the door, they were like, oh shit, guys, the door isn't going to close all the way, and they were like, whatever, just close it till the doors touch
I told
each
you guys
other.
your specs
And
were all
that's
wrong
good.
here. I looked at the blueprints. Not good.
oh, see right here, this is where the demon got in. You got to get somebody to take care of this.
Speaking of the compound, one more thing. For this entire movie, they have this fort that the British are controlling, and that's where the hospital is, and that's where the priest is staying, and that's where Father Merrin's. Everyone's staying there. They're protected. They're in this little compound. It's walled in, and then they go to the church, which is at a dig site, which is so far away that they're always taking trucks to it. Until the end of the movie, in the middle of this sandstorm and this huge battle, when Father Merrin stumbles out of the compound and walks a few feet, and the church is right there, and I'm like, why were you driving trucks to this church for the entire movie if it's 40 feet away? What the fuck
Gas
is
is
wrong
cheap
with this
there.
movie?
Why not? Smoke if you got them, right?
Maybe the sandstorm. Maybe the sandstorm geographically changed the region, mid-storm.
It moved the church closer.
Yeah, like the sandstorm shifted the entire Earth's crust in like a 10-mile radius, and so things just got closer together during the sandstorm.
In terms of practical effects, I thought the scene in the hospital when the villagers like come to kill the little boy Joseph, and
and they're all dressed up in their chalky
yeah,
outfits,
like Ace Ventura 2 style.
where they're- yeah, exactly. And not a single one of them is wearing a locust headdress, which is really where they went wrong.
for real.
I mean, how are you going to spit a jaguar at somebody in dinky ass like scarves and braids? And shit?
There's no locusts at all in this movie, and it's troubling.
It's insane.
It's troubling.
It's like they've lost their mind. It's like they didn't even watch the previous movies.
Fools.
But anyways, go ahead.
Anyway.
Matt. The bone breaking is what I'm.
Yeah,
sure
the
you're
bone
talking
breaking. It was awesome. I thought they did a really.
about. Pazuzu breaks some bones.
Yeah, he gets down to business.
I thought the makeup on her face in the final battle was pretty good.
Yeah,
The makeup throughout, I think, all the makeup and practical effects makeup was very good. And honestly, I thought the church, like this demonic church idea, was like the set designer nailed it. That was very well executed.
It looked too new. It was like, oh yeah, this is from 1000 BC or
But-
something.
yeah.
Like-
I took that to be like sealed and untouched.
right? Yeah, they have a line of
that
dialogue
movie.
explaining it. It's just like, it
Right.
did look very new. It was noticeable.
And it didn't
But I thought it
necessarily
was cool.
feel
I thought
like
it was
it
a
had
cool-
been buried for thousands of years. Like, I don't know.
it felt like a set.
Wouldn't the dirt have gone in the church?
They also were saying it was
super
so far
convenient.
back in time that this would have been like maybe the largest structure on Earth at the time or something. Like it's a really big building.
Right. And they also built it just to bury
Yeah.
it. They're like, no, it's
It's
gotta be
gotta be
nice.
nice.
It has to have statues. Now I want a mosaic of Lucifer falling on this wall, and I want a bunch of statues of knights over here surrounding the cross of Jesus, if he's been born yet. I'm not sure if he has. And then on this wall, I want another big mosaic, but under this all, I also want a tunnel to the Pazuzu statue, and I need it all done quickly. And then we're just
They
gonna-
definitely didn't tell the people who were working on the church, like the guy painting the mosaic. He's like, people are gonna love this. They're gonna love my mosaic.
Yeah. Oh, this is my big break.
Yeah.
This is my. I've been doing street art for years, and this is my.
When
big
they
All
finally
those
finished it, they
African
just-
church patrons, they're gonna love it.
When they finally finished it, they just stood outside and they're like, "It's magnificent. Bring in the dirt."
Yeah, and then just the backhoe comes in. And just
The bulldozers that like aren't period
Yeah,
correct.
exactly.
exactly. The steampunk Aramaic.
It's like four guys like conjoined, like
Jesus
forming the shape of a
bulldozers.
wheel.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bunch of. It's like the whole like Egyptian guys whipping Hebrew
Yeah.
slaves. Like a wheel.
Wheels were still square back then.
What did you guys think of the plot twist, just in general? Because like my first reaction was when it was like, oh, we think the little boy's possessed. That's what we're supposed to think, and then it turns out it's her, the girl that's been trying to seduce the priest that we thought was cool. And my first reaction was, ooh, good plot twist. I didn't see that coming. And then I was like, wait, it doesn't make any fucking sense. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, oh wait, maybe bad plot twist.
I was just like, "Oh, that's how they're gonna kill the young priest." I knew they were gonna kill that young priest.
Yeah.
That's how they did it. That's a pretty good way to kill him, I guess.
He was so pretty. He needed to be killed.
What have I seen him in?
too pretty
What
to
have I
live.
seen him in?
He's been in like nothing unless you like me really enjoyed the Marvel TV show Peggy Carter, Agent of
It
S.H.I.E.L.D.
must
or
be
whatever
more
the
than
fuck it
that.
was.
I've seen.
Yeah,
him
he definitely
somewhere.
looks familiar.
He was Jarvis, the Stark butler in that show, and that's the only thing I know him from. He's been in very little else in the interim.
I'm
I'll
trying to
be
look
the
him up.
judge
Hold
of
on.
this. Yeah, I got it right
Yeah,
here.
we'll go ahead and do your homework. Do your homework now in the middle of the podcast if you'd like.
I just assumed you would know who he was, like immediately.
Yeah, I know who he is. He's a guy who's been in like three
But
things.
you need to know who he is in regards to who I think he is.
I don't know. Do you watch?
Oh,
British
he's in
stuff? 'Cause I think
Dunkirk.
he's been in some British.
He's in
things.
Dunkirk.
Well, yeah. There's a million dark-haired British people who are in
Oh
Dunkirk.
my
They're
God.
literally all
But
indistinguishable.
he's got a
If you
pointy
could tell
nose.
Three of them apart. No, they're all. That's the problem. One
Oh,
of the problems with
I
Dunkirk
know what it is.
Tom Hardy's the only one I knew, and that's because I knew he was the guy in the plane.
He's in Cloud Atlas, a movie I love. That,
Oh, that's the famous movie that everyone's watched that he's
but
in.
I love that movie.
Just kidding,
You
no.
guys should know that.
Hey, listen, Colin, I'm going to tell you something right here. I'm going to admit something
Yes.
to you. Cloud Atlas is the dumbest movie I've never seen.
Screw you, man. You don't get it. You don't.
You're right.
Get
I
it.
don't get it. You know why I don't get it? Because it's stupid and I'm not going to watch it.
You know, with respect to the plot twist, I don't know. I was hooked. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I liked it too. I thought it was a good twist. I feel like
It didn't make any fucking sense, but I guess it was a good twist.
I mean, it made enough sense, you know.
You know, some of the best twists don't make any sense.
Yeah.
It was a good twist. They should have done a little more early in the story to kind of
Well, they do kind of plant something right away. Blanking on what it was exactly. Oh, when he walks in on her and she's got the tarot cards, and she's like, it's
Right.
like it clearly
right.
spells out like you will die in the church or something like
Yeah.
that, or it's something like winky, you know.
But it's also none of those scenes. If you actually watch those scenes, thinking that she's possessed by a demon in those scenes, they don't really make
But
sense.
I didn't
Like,
think
they-
it made sense that they kissed each other. And so I kind of like chalked it up to like, oh, that was like the demon wanting to like get freaky.
Right. Like if she had been a little more aggressively seductive or something, but she was kind of subdued. Aside from the fact when she talked about like the Nazi thing and then was like, "But enough about me. Let's talk about you."
Come sit here next to me on the bed.
Or what does she say?
Wait,
like, I won't
did
bite.
you-
When she
Yeah.
says that line, I was like,
Yeah. That's yeah. Yeah, and then she repeats it later.
Isn't there a kid
did you
dying
guys-
in this room? Like, what are you making little jokes about not biting for?
Yeah, we can sit to this couch and make out and watch the life slip from his poor
Yeah,
little body.
they do not take kids, or they do take kids dying in this movie very lightly. It's just a plot element, that nothing more.
It happens. Yeah, what are you gonna
Wait,
do? Wait,
isn't
listen,
the
I could
majority?
try to prevent this, but I mean, it's gonna be a lot cheaper just to let him go.
Isn't the majority of the death in the movie child death?
Yeah.
Or is it like 50-50 child?
Jeffries is like the only
you're-
adult who dies.
No, you're forgetting about the massive
the massacre of the
colonials
soldiers.
versus natives
Yeah.
war, where it's like machine guns versus spears, which I was like, oh, this isn't gonna end well. But then they actually start killing themselves, like the people start fighting against their own people. Because it's just chaos, which they hinted at, they planted earlier in the movie, so I'm going to give them a pass on that. But that's where the most death occurs.
That's right.
But how good would it have been when they dig themselves out of their underground tomb somehow,
I thought
which doesn't make any sense.
I thought it was
also.
funny that they didn't go through the exit. Like, they just dug out.
Right. There was a door there at some point, but they somehow dig themselves out of this tomb that is not only beneath the church that they've been excavating, but it's like beneath that they have to go lower, and they dig themselves out. But how good would it have been if Chuma had survived and been like, oh, it's just he just nicked me with that spear and was there to greet them,
or to like drive them back
better.
to safety or whatever.
True, because they're stranded in the fucking middle of
Also, like the blocking in the scene where he tries to go warn them to not have a war. Was really bad. Like, they easily restrain him from like getting anywhere near anyone, and yet in the same shot you've got tribesmen and British people like moving freely amongst one another while they're about to kill each other, and they're doing like a really good job of restraining him and like a really bad job of like getting in position to kill each other. You know what I mean? It's like, why is the blocking like that?
I noticed that too, and I think in a technical sense, if we're getting into that, the editing in this film, and I don't know what they had to work with, and I don't know how much of it is related to the reshoots and the
I'm sure
half
a
the
lot
movie being redone or more.
90% of it.
But I noticed right from the beginning, right from the opening scenes, there was something about like how it was cutting together that was off. And a lot of it was like, how you can cut from, you don't have to obey the 180-degree rule if you're cutting from like something in a guy's hand, and then you cut from over his shoulder to the perspective of the thing in his hand. You can cheat on that because we know that he's looking down at a thing, and then you see that perspective. There's certain stuff in filmmaking you can get away with, and they push that to the limit in this one, because there were so many times when I just noticed that they were cutting within a scene and kind of playing fast and loose with where we were, and just assuming that since we knew the geography, we would get it. And it's not that I didn't. It's not that I was ever disoriented to the point where I was like, oh, I don't even know what's going on. But I was occasionally had moments where I was like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? Why do I feel like weird about what I'm looking at right now? And it was because they either jumped a line or did something weird.
Yeah.
I never understood the geography in general, like that whole where the church is, where the village is, all that stuff. And also like the weird cuts to the blood going up into the IV thing. Like they were kind of like, they moved us around in the room.
And didn't pay off.
Yeah, they moved us around in that room with those cuts that it didn't make sense. But anyways, should we
I mean,
do our
let's
ratings?
wrap this up.
did we learn anything from this movie?
I learned how to exorcise a demon.
I learned that the Exorcist series is a lot like the Highlander series. So, Highlander 1 is obviously the classic. Exorcist 1 is the classic. Highlander 2 tries to make a high concept sci-fi, and it does not work out very well. Highlander 3 tries to go back to what made the original good, but it doesn't work very well, but it compares well because of that. And then Highlander 4 is Highlander Endgame, where they bring together the guy from the show and the guy from the movies, and they try to make a sequel that's like, and this is in the 2000s again, and they try to make a sequel that will be good for the DVD sales that, obeys a lot of the rules of making a sequel type movie. And Highlander 5 sucks, so I'm not excited about the next one. So,
Well, you're just
but
jumping to conclusions.
The sex scene in Highlander 5, if I remember correctly, is pretty hot. So,
Well, maybe we'll cover this one day when we cover the Highlander movies.
I would just like to point out, Colin, you don't have to like pitch this and try to sell it and try to work it. You don't have to like weasel your way in through some backdoor segue. You're going to get to pick right after we do Lethal Weapon, and you can do Highlander if you want to. In fact, I encourage you to. I think it's an interesting franchise, but like don't just work this into your Timothy Dolphin rating.
Julio already tried to turn this into a Back to the Future podcast.
I didn't try. It just happened.
All right, here's what I learned. I learned that there are several different ways to hang a crucifix on your wall. Many, many different ways to do it. The only wrong way is anchoring it right in the middle so it can be easily twisted upside down. That is the one no-no. Do not hang your crucifix through like a center anchor.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies you could learn that from.
All right, I learned that when you when you fall down and hit your head on a rock, a lake level of blood will pour out of your head moments like way after you hit your head. I thought that scene was ridiculous when she like is alive at the end. He saved her. He exorcised the demon out of her, and then they have like a full blown conversation. Then she's like, "Oh wait," and then like a torrent of blood just like comes out the back of her head to the point where I was like, "Is there a leak in the cave? Like what's happening?" And I was like, "Oh, it's blood."
Yeah, I would have loved to hear the behind the scenes discussion that went into that. Like, she lived there. Everything's fine now. Everything's good. And like, yeah, that's a really good ending. She's too hot though. They'll want to get together, and he's got to be a priest. So
is it all because they just had to have it come full circle that it's like exactly like the opening scene where like there's not just one survivor amidst like all these dead bodies? They couldn't have her live. Like, I don't know.
The little boy lived.
I guess.
Well, no, I think it's more to what Colin's saying is that they couldn't have him get married to a hot.
That's true.
Doctor. Yeah.
Great. Let's rate this bad boy.
All right, I will go first. I'm currently looking up what I gave The Exorcist 2 because that's what I'm going to compare this to. Sorry. I will go first. I felt like this was a very interesting concept. I think it looked okay. The CGI was fucking terrible. I thought the actors were all really good. I enjoyed the performances from top to bottom. I thought the setting was really good. My reaction when it finished, the third act was fucking terrible, and the CGI was abysmal. And at the end of it, I was just like, meh, So good concept, but they picked the wrong character. They should have been exploring the origins of Lieutenant Kinderman. His rookie years, him learning the ropes of
dating,
both the police force and dating and finding and and where he decides despite the advice of his partner, the veteran, who says, just like aim within your wheelhouse, Kinderman. Don't reach too high.
Don't go out of your league, man.
Kinderman decides to reach for the stars.
Go for hot priests.
And go for hot priests. He makes that decision, even if it means ostracism in the eyes of the police force. And I would have loved to explore that reality.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but you know what that picture needs is a guy who can sort of make the sounds machines make with his mouth. I think that would be really.
You're doing your police academy thing, and I actually think, but that would be Kinderman dating within his own, within that blue line, which I don't know.
We'll work on it. We'll tweak it. We'll work on it.
Yeah. So, anyways, my Timothy Dolphin rating, I give this movie. Honestly, it wasn't fucking terrible. The Exorcist 3 was so bad that I think it scarred me to giving things terrible ratings ever again. But at the same time, as an Exorcist movie, I felt like this had the potential to be really good, and I enjoyed the first half of it so much, and I liked Stellan Skarsgård, and I'm looking forward to watching the other version that Paul Schrader did.
The exact same movie, but it
right, the exact same movie
guy.
with a slightly different, with less CGI hyenas.
We hope. We don't know.
Yeah, hopefully. So I gave it 4 Timothy Dolphins. It's not unwatchable, but it's definitely not fucking good.
Did you press the wrong sound effect button?
Yes, I did.
Awesome. Leave it in. Don't edit that.
I'm like, where's the sound? Why don't I hear it?
I'll go next. Sure, I'll go next. Okay, so I have to say I really, really was pleasantly surprised by the movie. I was expecting not to enjoy it as much as I did. I really liked the history angle and was fascinated by it. So I think the first third of the movie I really enjoyed the most. I think the middle third lost me a bit, and then the third was a little disappointing to me because I felt like it didn't really pay off the way that I wanted it to. But I thought the performances were great. I agree with all of the geography, the actual understanding of how this whole world laid out, where the church was, and where the whatever lodge that they were living in was, whatever it was. So I found all of that a little bit confusing. Certain moments were fantastic, like when the former director kills himself or is possessed by the devil or possessed by the spirit and dies. So, but I was ultimately disappointed in the ending. So I'm gonna be a little bit more generous than Harris, but not too much more generous, and I'm gonna give it a 6. Timothy Dolphins.
Beautiful. That's a nice score. Colin, you want to go?
I guess so. Clearly, you don't.
No, don't care for it.
Okay. Yeah. I think I enjoyed this movie more than it was a good movie, and that goes a long way with me. So
It's as we know.
yeah, as we know. It just made me super nostalgic for the type of movies I compared it to earlier, the Underworld movies, the Blade sequels, the Resident Evil movies, all these movies. I got all the DVDs, I watched them all, and that was the 2000s for me, is like DVDs and watching these movies that, yeah, in some ways were mediocre, but I appreciated what they were doing, and I love to be entertained, and I even thought of the Hellboy movies. They're a stronger version of this kind of genre, this kind of mood that movies were in this 2000s time. And for me, I started out the 2000s graduating high school, going to Texas Tech, and by at 2005 I was it wasn't working for me as a student of journalism and going to Texas Tech. By 2009 I was like a failed waiter, and by 2000
Are you a failed waiter?
Yeah, waiter is the bottom line.
Yeah, I'm really selling myself short.
So you just can't hack it here at TGI Fridays.
I'm sorry, but don't quit your day job, as they say. Wait, this is my day job.
Right. But
You'll never work at Applebee's ever again.
But by 2012,
The dream is dead.
You're a failed waiter.
they get 2 other waiters.
You better just fall back on your filmmaking career, because you'll never cut it as a waiter, kid.
They get 2 other waiters to grab me by each arm and like throw me out on the fucking Applebee's curb that's just inside of the Applebee's
double
parking
doors
lot.
closed.
Yeah.
And don't come back.
Yeah, but by 2012, I was like a film student again. So these movies that ultimately we don't see as all-time classic movies, they were there with me during a time when I was learning to appreciate so many things and try to learn to foster whatever talent I may or may not have, I guess, and try to figure out something else to do with my life. And so yeah, it made me nostalgic for that kind of feeling. And so I'm still only giving it a 6, unfortunately. So it was cool. So 6 Timothy Dolphins for me.
Wow. That's high
They
praise.
drag you out of the Applebee's and throw you on the curb, but you're still inside the Applebee's parking lot. It's so insulting somehow. So more insulting somehow that you're not off the property, even though they consider you.
I'm sorry, sir. You're gonna have to cry in your car.
But please park it on the street over there, not in this parking lot.
Yeah.
All right. I will rate this movie. I enjoyed it. I think it works better. Like I said, I think it works better when reading the Wikipedia description of the plot. But, obviously this had some flaws. The CGI is terrible. It's a little, all over the place. It kind of devolves into like a B-grade action movie at the end, with like all these nonsensical deaths. I thought it was a bit hardcore at times, like with all the children death. Having a child myself, I can't watch things like this anymore. And so I found it particularly disturbing that we had to see a little girl get shot in the head like 3 or 4 times. And then another little kid, and then a kid gets eaten by hyenas, and then a maggot baby. Yeah,
Maggots.
I mean,
I can't.
to the point where when the Jeffries guy, they find him hanging in the church and his like guts are eaten out. I was like, this is refreshing.
Yeah. Oh, thank God. It's just an adult man who's been eviscerated.
But having said all that, I mean, I think at its core, I liked a lot of the ideas presented in this movie. I think the story is pretty clever, and like the history, the lore that they created was pretty inventive. I like the location and the setting and all that stuff, and I think the acting is really good. I like the girl from Goldeneye; she was good. And
Skarsgård.
Skarsgård, he's my Skarsgård for life. Yeah, I don't know. Having said that, this movie has a lot of good pieces, but for some reason the whole didn't really come together, as we've discussed. And so I feel like for me, and this is from a time period that I particularly loathe for movies. I feel like the early 2000s was just like a time when I didn't go to the movies a lot because I thought everything looked like shit. I feel like this movie feels like very middle of the road for me. And for that, I give it 5 Timothy Dolphins.
I feel like I want to give a lower score after. I feel like you made a strong case.
Well, that's it, guys. We did it. We've achieved. We reached the begining. Exorcist, the beginning, and
We've just started.
It's Father Merrin.
We've
to you.
only just begun.
Julio. Sorry to keep you up so late, man.
And everyone should go see Julio's. Not go see Julio's movie. Go stream Julio's movie, especially if they have
Go
kids.
see it
Totally.
in your
Team
living
Marco.
room.
So you can see it in your living room.
Yeah.
The entire family can see it
Yep.
for $5.99.
$5.99. All right.
Yeah.
I was going to say we had some technical difficulties in the beginning, so I'm not sure if the information is going to be heard. So maybe just give us a rundown again of like where people could find it, and it's available now.
Sure, yeah. So it's available now. It's called Team Marco. It's a new family film, and it's being distributed by Samuel Goldwyn Films. And you can check out teammarco.movie. And from teammarco.movie, you can click over to Apple or Amazon or Google or Fandango, or you can also get it on demand on your cable network.
So people, if you have children, if you have a television, and you're looking for content for your kids to shut them up for 2 hours, we got the greatest thing for you. It's called Team Marco.
It's really great, and there are no maggot babies.
Oh, those scenes were cut.
Yeah,
along with
I
the
couldn't
hyena
afford the
costumes.
maggots.
Julia, are you a Twitterer, or like can people follow you in particular in some?
Yeah, actually, so you can follow me at Julio Vincent Gambuto on Twitter, or I have a really big Medium following now. So I write weekly for Medium, and I post my articles usually on Tuesday or Wednesday. And I have a column that covers the pandemic and politics and sort of where the pandemic and politics and the personal meet. So that you can follow on Medium as well.
I totally thought you were talking about doing seances for a second.
I'm a medium.
Which would have been perfect.
I'm a really big medium.
Perfect for this podcast.
If you want to talk to any of your dead relatives.
I am a medium, so I don't do exorcisms, but I do.
He's a spin-off of the Long Island medium. He's the Staten
I'm the
Island.
Staten Island medium.
Yeah. Staten Island medium. And your production company is Borough 5 Productions, and they will be coming out with more fun movies shortly,
You can
I'm
check
sure.
us out at meetborough5.com.
Julia, do you have anything else that you want to plug? Anything going on?
No, life is good.
Perhaps a trivia show?
I did a kids trivia show that I started during the height of the pandemic because I was trying to connect with my nieces and nephews, and it sort of got this little following on Facebook, and so we expanded it, and we just shot 24 episodes this fall, and it was really, really fun. I was really happy with it. So you can check that out at unclejulie.tv, and I play the crazy uncle in the show. I'm the host. It's a little bit of Mr. Rogers and a little bit of Jimmy Fallon, and it's really fun. So check that out too.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot going on, and because it may have been cut earlier, I just want to say congratulations to all that you're working on.
Thank you. I appreciate the support a lot, and thanks for having me on. This was really fun.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you for staying up late for us.
Great. All right. Well, awesome. How should we take ourselves out of this show? Should we take a piece of glass and stick it in our throats? And
That's what I think every time Colin's making a pun. I'm just like, where did I leave my glass?
Let's let the intense barking of hyenas take us out of the show.
As it sings me to sleep every night.
Yeah, the laughter of hyenas.
Yes, that's right. They're laughing. Whoopi Goldberg, take us out.
Yes.
Jesus Christ! It is he who commands!